Hi, my name is Susie Jervich. Some people call me Little Susie Stardust. Funny thing happened along the way for me is back in 2015, I came to realize some things were changing for me. And with it being said, the changes came in the form of gifts of different intuitive qualities. And what I learned from all of that is that all of us are getting gifts, different types of gifts that come in and arrive. Sometimes we're asking for gifts. Sometimes they just show up and we're unprepared and unknowing. Well, I was the unprepared and unknowing one that received the gifts. In 2015, I learned some things about myself that maybe you also have happening with you as well, as I became highly empathic, intuitive. I was able to read other people's thoughts, their bodies. I could do body scans. Again, these are things I was not asking for. The abilities just came in. Also, the ability to work as a medium also arrived in 2015. And while I do see these as divine gifts, it was a little bit overwhelming for me. And what I learned, and possibly you as well, is that as we go through these processes, it's really important to have somebody with you that will unconditionally support you in your own journey, in whatever gifts or things that are arising for you in your own life, that it's important to have support. Lucky for me, I had a few. And then some people, of course, found it that Susie had changed substantially, and so I call it now vibrating out. At that time, I called it a loss of people in my life, and now I just simply call it vibrating out. So as I grew into my gifts and began to really own it and be in those energies, I found that a lot of people that I love vibrated out. But here's the good news, is that new people vibrated in from me. And that's the most wonderful part of that too. So what I do now, just to give you a little idea, is that I am tapping into what's called the Akashic Records. Now, this is not a term that I have known my entire life. I can say I read a book back in 2013, and there was a slight reference to that in the book, so I was somewhat familiar with it. But when I became more attuned and more adapting and more adept at the gifts that I was receiving, this was by the end of 2015, I started to ask, what is it that I'm doing? And through the help of others that are helping me or supporting me at that time, we did come to the understanding that what I was doing is tapping into the Akashic Records. Now, this records is a really wonderful piece, and this is typically what I do with my clients that come in. And how it works is with my clients, I ask them to bring, first it was 10 questions, and then after working with people working on 10 questions, it was easy for us to discern that by the third question we answered all 10. So what I do now is I ask for people to bring in 10 questions, and in most cases my eyes will be open as I go through and tap into the Akashic Records for whoever I'm working with. And sometimes I will go into what's called a trance channel. My eyes will be closed, my body is fairly relaxed. However, you will see me experiencing things in a different way, meaning my eyes do water sometimes. And when I go into another experience, you may see me having some movement, or because when I'm tapping into the Akashic Records, I'm actually going to the exact location where I'm seeing it. And so I may be reaching out and having experiences with the Akashic. Now, for those of you that don't know what Akashic means, it's a Sanskrit word. And the way I look at it when I say Akashic Records is that, and many people have some awareness of this, some don't. And some people could say it's like a library. It's a library in the sky or in the heavens. And you could say it's a building, and you may say that the Akashic Records are in a book. And sometimes a lot of people see it that way. I don't. The way I see the Akashic Records is that in the higher realms, in the places of the vastness and the stars and the possibility of infinite awareness, that's where my Akashic Records are seen. So when I'm looking at the Akashic Records, it's all a visual interpretation for me. I see as if it's in the midst of all the stars and all the heavens, that there's almost like a grid or a matrix or a web is how I see it. So the Akashic for me is represented in that way, is in the form of a wave or a grid or a matrix. And how I feel about that when I'm retrieving information is that each one of us, every person, everything, and as a matter of fact, everything that has ever been is represented in some aspect within the Akashic Records. Now, when I do a reading for somebody, I'm specifically working with that one human being. And by them asking me a question, it is my divine acknowledgement that I am asked to go in on a soul level, to go and retrieve and tap in on that soul to tap into the information that I can see. Now, the beautiful thing here is that when I first started understanding about the Akashic Records is that they came in as beautiful pictures. And let me just tell you, the pictures were not necessarily of this world. And so if I was an artist, which I'm not, if I was an artist, it would be so beautiful to paint what I was seeing, because often the words escape me when I go in and see these visuals because they're so beautiful. And at first it brought me to tears every time I would see it, because it was, to me, it was just such universal love. And tapping into that kind of love, it's forever moving for me. The first few times I did it, I was so touched by the love. And I still am, although I'm able to do it more dried-eyed these days. So that's how it really works for me with the Akashic Records, is a person asks me a question. By the act of them asking the question, I have permission from soul to soul, their soul to mine, to go in and see what we can find to address what the question is. It's quite beautiful. It still comes in pictures. And sometimes the pictures could be in different locations that are not that we're familiar to within the earth plane or within the Gaia experience. Some of them are outwardly experiences. Some of them may also turn into a past life experience. And that's really interesting to see. And then a person could say, well, why is this coming up when I ask a question about my next job or my next relationship? And what we find sometimes from going into past life regression through the Akashic Records is that we're able to find some sort of a perspective. You know, sometimes we're looking at things from one angle. And what we found through the Akashic is that there's many different angles and ways to approach a present moment experience and look at something that you've already lived, you've already experienced, and then we see a different perspective. And so I never... people ask me yes or no questions, and I'm not really a fan of yes or no. I'll give information that I see, and sometimes if I'm explaining a past life experience, for example, I might go into a little bit of what I'm seeing with the past life vision that I'm getting, and also perhaps a perspective or something to tag back into the initial inquiry of the question. And most people want an exact answer to a question, I find. And the interesting thing about this beautiful journey called life is that it seems to be that if we had all the answers when we started, there'd be nothing fun for us to do here. Meaning fun, having a great time, having good experiences, and then oops, we fall down, we have all these different experiences. So really for the answers that I give, it's not a direct answer to the question, but it's giving enough breadcrumbs for the person that I work with to go through the process and to kind of take in the information that was given, and for the person themselves to come up with their own conclusion. So I, as an Akashic reader, are able to tap in, get a perspective, share it with the person that I'm working with. And of course, I never tell them exactly what to do or not to do. I give them perspective, and I give them a different... It's almost like if you look at the sun from one angle and just imagine yourself on the other side of the sun, you know, so it's kind of like seeing the same thing but from a different angle, and that's how I approach the Akashic reading. And you could even say you see the sun from one angle, then you could say, well, what if I was over the sun from the earth perspective, over the sun or under the sun. So you're seeing it from all angles. And when you begin to see more of your own life through more angles, whether it's by living in the present moment and seeing what's here or going back into the Akashic Records, then that does give you a little bit more perspective. The Akashic Records are really interesting too because it opens up so much possibility. For me as the practitioner and as the open channel for this, I also am amazed by what comes out of my mouth or what comes into my field of awareness as in messages. So with each person that I work with, I'm learning and gaining more insight into my own life. I had one person that was just so wonderful. She was kind of somebody I was nervous about doing a reading with because she has been in higher circles and has a lot of understanding of all of this, and I was a little bit apprehensive about working with her. At the end, she said, and the visuals I got for her were not of this world, by the way, so it was very abstract, and I think she understood that, and that's just what came through for her, and there was messages for her in that. At the end, she said to me, she said, "Susie, how much of that was for you?" And I said, because I knew she was going to say something like that, just to see, like, where am I at with my practice? And the only thing I could think of is we are all one. So what one person gets a message, it's meant for all of us. Any message I have for my own self, it's really for everybody as well. So when we start seeing as I start working with more people and getting these insights, it's, I believe, assisting the people that I work with. I get some really beautiful feedback, and then it also assists me, and it also expands my own mind and my own level of curiosity as a human being. So the Akashic reading is just a big part of what I do, and in some cases it's a spontaneous experience. People think, well, Susie, do you need to go into a trance or get into some state? Because as people who know me, I have quite a personality and I'm quite gregarious and have a lot of fun, and with that being said, I can go into an immediate state of being open, and with that being open, the readings can come fairly quick. Now, I have to tell you, going back to 2015, when I was opening to these energies, that a lot of things happened to me. I alluded to this a little bit at the beginning. The changes in my body there was a lot of changes within the body system. People around me had vibrated out. I was overwhelmed with different things that were coming in, and on my own, I had like I said, some friends that helped me with this integration. And again, this is what I do now too as a practice, is I'm also assisting others who are receiving, I call them downloads or a bunch of gifts at one time, and they're overwhelmed, and it's just they're freaked out. And that's how I was in 2015. So what's happening now is people bring those people to me because they know that I did this almost by myself, and it was I would have loved to have had somebody that could help me and was more aware, but I did have some beautiful beings assisting me. With that being said, with all the changes I went through, and of course people right now are waking up all across the globe right now with rising as Gaia, our beautiful planet, is moving from 3D into 5D. There's many humans here that are following and aiding and assisting with Gaia as she is ascending as well. And I appear to be one of those. But I can tell you in 2015, when I was going through all this, it felt really challenging for me. It was a hard time for me, had sad feelings. I had feelings of grief. I had feelings of, I didn't understand who I was. What was actually happening in that, what's happening to a lot of people right now, is that as we're going through this process of an ascension process, is that things are coming in to us, new information, new data, and it's happening simultaneously. So as we're getting in new information to further evolve us as human beings here, is we're also simultaneously releasing old karma or old samskara. So for people that don't know these words, these are also Sanskrit words, and what it means is that to be more of an open channel, it's really important and necessary for you to be more fully open, is to release and let go. And that's exactly what I was doing, was releasing and letting go. And this is just a kind of going on and on about my process, but it does give you some understanding about where my heart is now. Is if you're going through some challenges right now in your own life and you feel like nobody understands you, well, nobody's going to understand you completely, but there's going to be a bunch of us that have been through what you've been through. We've walked a similar path. We've had similar feelings and emotions, feelings of losses or different things, and also that joy in having these gifts. When the gifts first come in, it may seem as a shock, and then you begin to discern what you're willing to do with the gifts, and some gifts you kind of tuck away for now. And that's really where I'm at today, and really happy to be part of the holistic healing community. I am a practitioner here as well as the founder of this group, and I have a lot of things to share, a lot of gifts to give, and I'm more in my joy when I give my gifts away and experiment with these and play with them. So I'd love to play with you, and I'm so happy that if you've listened to it in this entirety, then you get like a double gold star. You get a new galaxy. I'm going to create a whole new galaxy for you, and you're going to have about a dozen planets there and star systems and all kinds of things. So we're going to gift you a whole new galaxy just in your name if you've completely listened to this point. Anyway, if you've listened also to this point, it means that you were meant to be here. It means that you were waiting for a message like this. It means that you, just by simply listening to the words at this moment now, that you're being fully activated, going into more of a light being body, and that you're activated into more of your own gifts, that your pineal gland is opening now. And with that said, you have a most beautiful day. This is your friend, Susie Q.